Hello and welcome to Eternal in 5. I'm aReNGee, and today we're going to be talking about the surprise 6th mechanic in the upcoming Eternal card game set, the Flame of Xulta, which is Invoke. Invoke, like Bargain, is only printed on 5 landmark cards in the upcoming set, but it's pretty different from anything else that we've already had in Eternal so far. If you're familiar with Hearthstone, it plays quite similarly to the Discover mechanic. Invoke is a summon effect that offers you a choice between 3 cards of the same faction, one of which will be a unit, one of which will be a spell, and one of which will be an attachment. You choose one and you draw that card. So, just additional card generation. We do not yet have confirmation, but it is strongly believed that this will only produce single faction cards of the type, and no multi-faction cards will be available, as that requires a lot of reading into your deck list, what stuff you have available, etc. As this does not function like steel effects, so you'll still have the influence requirements. So if you pick up Witching Hour, still going to cost you 6 shadow in order to get that active. Drawing cards is very good, and that means that all of the units are presumably eminently playable. As we start off with the Fire 1, Goliath, Shavka's Listener. It is a 4/1 charge that replaces itself when you play it through the Invoke mechanic, and it has some flavor text about mastery. This is certainly a fine card in any fire-based aggressive deck, as it allows you to put pressure on the opponent while using the Invoke mechanic to, find whatever you're looking for, whether it be removal, bigger units, some burn to close out the game. Certainly a playable card. Oda Grodov's Listener is the time selection. It is much worse body as a 2/3, but has a much easier mastery of +3/+3, or of 5. Can't quite get there with a single obelisk, so you're going to need to put more effort into it. But still potentially a playable card. We're going to have to see how well Invoke plays in practice before you go too deep on this guy. Azuzi Kodash's Listener has double damage as a 1/1, so the worst body so far, certainly in a land of snowballs, and the highest mastery or an even higher mastery at Mastery 10. Then again, Justice does have some of the best Invoke cards, but you're not really getting a lot of the body out of this one, so I don't think this is a card that's going to see too much play early on. Blitrock, Lin Raiser Listener. Does it feel like these names are just sort of getting generated by a computer? Tough to pronounce. Is a 1/3, but you can pay 3 to deal 1 damage to an enemy, and it only costs Mastery 3 to invoke, so this one might see a little more play in something like an Elysian deck, where you can either use Obelisk or just get up to 9 and then pay its ability 3 times, because getting that second invoke off the mastery effect is quite powerful. Playing it just in a straight deck is unlikely, as a 1/3 is pretty costly for 4, not very good. And finally, we have the coolest name of the cycle, Incarnus, Makar's Listener. As a 3/3 unblockable, you actually have some hope of getting this through. Obviously a terrible blocker and dies to Torch, but in 3 attacks, it does turn into a 6/6 unblockable and give you Invoke again. I would say that this one and the Fire are the most likely to be played in the cycle, with large question marks surrounding the Time and the Primal ones, depending on the decks that surround them. The Justice one, I think, just has too weak of a body to see play. So again, Invoke is only available on this cycle of 5 legendaries, all of which have a difficult-to-enable mastery effect in order to get a second card out of them, but these are all reasonable cards, as the Invoke mechanic does guarantee that these cards replace themselves, and they give you a little bit of choice as to what you're going to get. We'll have to do some in-depth running of numbers, both for the ranked format and the expedition format, to see what your odds of getting, a removal spell, a high-cost minion, etc. is. But in in ranked, I think the pool is large enough for units especially that you can't rely on getting anything too useful at a given time, so it comes back to how effective the bodies are, as it did with the merchant mechanics when the merchants originally came out. We'll have to see how Invoke stacks up.